Hello, welcome to Walk in the Park. My name is Tony Ingram, and this week we are, let's see, where are we here? May 22nd, 2013, and episode 47. So we're going to go to some interesting places today and do some interesting things. First off, let's go up in the air with one of local resident photographer and aerial photographer, particularly Bill Heck's aerial pictures here. We are way up over, well, south of Ithaca, and actually, if you can see Cayuga Lake up at the top of the picture there, and then off to the left you see a valley. Now that's not the valley that's just south of Cayuga Lake, the inlet valley. That is 6 Mile Creek Valley. So we're going to fly around. Cornell, by the way, is at the upper right. We're going to fly around and look up that valley from Ithaca and Cayuga Lake. So looking south, the opposite direction we're looking now. So we'll go down there. There we are, looking up the 6 Mile Creek Valley, which separates South Hill from East Hill, and Cornell from Ithaca College, and so forth. And the whole area is a nature preserve for several miles, and the lower part of it is a wildflower preserve, the Mulholland Wildflower Preserve. And if you look in the upper portion of it, the picture, the upper right, you'll see a couple of lakes, which you may be familiar with. These are the city reservoirs. The lower reservoir is in the lower part of the picture. And that is actually not used anymore for water supply for Ithaca, but the one to the upper right is called the upper reservoir, is the city water supply, and they restrict access to that to protect the water quality. So along the eastern side, would be the right-hand, I'm sorry, is that the eastern side? No, the southern side of the valley. On the right-hand side of this picture is a trail through the woods, which you can't see from this aerial picture, but if you get down on the ground, you will find this kiosk coming off of Burns Road, which crosses 6 Mile Creek. And this is the South Hill, actually, yeah, it's the South Hill Recreationway. You can just barely make it out in that sign here in the shadow of the overhang. The South Hill Recreationway. It's an old railroad bed that goes into Ithaca. There's several old railroad beds coming into Ithaca from several directions. The only one that still exists as a railroad is the one that goes Cayuga Inlet Valley and up the east shore of the lake, and that's just a freight route. But the others have all been taken up, and some of them have been converted to bike hike routes and so forth. So here's the East Hill Recreationway that the town of Ithaca, the town of Ithaca Park, has created. There's a nice bench there. Here's someone running along it. People also walk and so forth. Let me see what we can see up in that picture. Actually, you can't see it, but way in the back, there's a couple of people. And one of them, when he came up, he has one of those stand-up wheel things that you can go around the mall or like the mall cop used and so forth, and he was using it on the trail. Pretty funny. But and looking off the trail into the wild woods, this is a ravine with a stream in it that goes down into the 6 Mile Creek Preserve, and which is actually city-owned land outside of the city, because it's the reservoir, it's the city water supply, so they own the land around it. And there are paths that go off that. Now, coming along this side of the trail, at one point you see this strange structure. What in the world is that? Now, there's a path that goes through there, you can see. Well, that's what they call a stile, S-T-I-L-E. And that is to allow pedestrians or people to walk through there, but not things like cows, or in this case, bicycles. We want bicycles to stay on the main path, not go down through into the side paths down into the preserve, because bicycles do a lot of damage to trails like that aren't built for them, so they can cause a lot of erosion. A lot of people still don't appreciate that, don't understand that, and they do ride their bikes. So the stile keeps you from eroding the trail with your bicycle. So anyway, I took the path, obviously, went down there and walked along. There's a wet spot that put some stones down. It's very nice. Didn't go all the way into the reservoir because they do have a place where you're supposed to stop, but there was another little stream that came by, and this is actually, I think it's very late April, but April 28th, I think it was, and the earliest wildflowers were coming up. And if you look at right at the base of this big old maple there that has a huge infection in it, you will see these little flowers on the right. That's what's called trout lily. And trout lily is an early spring wildflower that only comes up in late April, early May, and then it completely disappears below the ground. You don't see it again. Also, this one is called Toothwort. I believe this one's called cut-leaf Toothwort. Again, an early spring, what they call spring ephemeral wildflower. So we're going to take a look actually in a minute at some more wildflowers. So I'm going to go to a video now to show you a 1-minute video about spring wildflowers. So let me bring that up for you. We'll have that just a second here. And bring it up. Some early woodland wildflowers in upstate New York are called spring ephemerals. They bloom and raise their leaves before the trees overhead leaf out, taking advantage of abundant light and warmth before the overhead foliage blocks most of the sun's rays for the rest of the season. By June, most spring ephemerals have completely disappeared above ground. Other woodland wildflowers are known as shade endurers. Though they send up their foliage and flowers quickly, they spend the rest of the season maturing their fruit and storing energy in their roots for the demands of next year's burst of spring growth. Okay, sorry if that was a little loud, a little bit louder than some of the other things in the production, but it was short. So that gives you a little summary of our spring wildflowers, and most of the picked flowers in that, in fact I think all of them, in that short video are now no longer blooming. Either they have disappeared entirely or they've begun this long summer foliage maturation, storing the energy in their roots for the next season. So we're going to go back up in the air again, looking over South Hill in Bill Heck's photograph. And what you see there in the center, actually just slightly left of center, that's Buttermilk Gorge, Buttermilk Glen and Buttermilk Falls State Park. And then to the right of that, just sort of center, right of center, is a companion gorge in the park called Owl Gorge. That one doesn't have any trails in it, but I'll have some pictures of that one, both of them actually later if we get that far. So we're going to swing around the airplane here. Now we're still over South Hill, looking over Ithaca College, towards the college in the upper right there, and then there's some of the housing in College Circle, I think that is, in the lower part of the picture, but then you can see the lake, and then Cornell's at the upper right on East Hill. And we'll fly now, again, this is actually saw this earlier picture, flying around over onto East Hill. 6 Mile Creek Valley is just in the extreme left there, looking down at, well, the upper right is Cornell. Let's see, where are we here? Now we'll zoom in a little bit here. Now if you look at the very center of the picture, and then you go to the right, directly to the right, you see a line of trees in there, and that's Cascadilla Creek. And there's another old railroad line in there, and there's some people on it right here. Look at that. They are planting a tree, clearly. And this is along the East Hill Recreationway, another town park. And there was an event that took place there recently, I think it was on the 11th, that I'm going to show you another video about. This one's a little bit longer, and so we'll go right to it.
This is the 10th tree that the Conservation Board has planted in honor of a wonderful tree hugger. This time it happens to be a huge program of wonderful tree huggers, the Cornell Plantations Natural Areas Program. And we have a bunch of those guys here. Todd, Mike, Jules, Ollie. And are you in the NA? There's the city forester. Grace, Jean Grace,
tree huggers all around.
and is anybody else from natural areas? Well, there's the biggest natural areas volunteer here, David Kiefer. There are also prior winners of the award, Tom and Janie. Anybody else that won it before? I don't think so. And there's Susan, who brought the tools. Thanks, Susan, for helping us dig this hole. We are, Kristine, me, and Susan, the communications committee of the Conservation Board, and we're in charge of the Fisher Award and of deciding who gets it and of handling the nominations. And we're really glad to have this happen here next to a Cornell Plantations natural area, the McDaniel's Nut Grove just across the way here. This is a town park. Every year we plant a tree in a town park and we engrave a little plaque that hangs in the town hall lobby. If you ever go there to, I don't know, pay your water bill or something, you can check this out in the town hall lobby. Every year another awardee gets to be on there, and there you go. We have two spaces left for the next 2 years. We hope we keep planting trees. This is something the Conservation Board does that actually happens. Otherwise, we give advice. We're an advisory board. We give advice to the town on environmental conservation matters, and sometimes the town listens to us and sometimes doesn't, but we like to plant trees because at least we know that they're there and that they're growing. So I want to introduce the chair of the Conservation Board, Kristine, who's going to tell you a little bit about Dick Fisher, whose award this is, and then Herb will present the award to him. And we're going to be planting this tree here, so if anything gets boring, you can play in the hole. There's food there. Please don't assume that you just got to stand there listening 100%. I wish I was digging a hole instead of speechifying, but that's all I have to say. Have a good time, have a fun party, and if you come on this recway, admire the swamp white oak that will fill in this space, we hope.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. There's a lot of people here who knew Dr. Fisher way better than I do. I only know him by reputation. The award is named in honor of the late Dr. Richard V. Fisher, who, like I said, I didn't know him personally, but I have come to know him some way through the years that I've been on the board and the presentation of this award. Dr. Fisher was a long-term resident of the town of Ithaca, and through his teaching and example, he improved the quality of the natural environment within the town and the state of New York. Dr. Fisher taught generations of students environmental conservation at Cornell through courses such as environmental writing and field natural history. He wrote hundreds of scientific and popular articles on a wide range of conservation-related topics, informing and engaging the interest of his peers in the field of conservation and inspiring and educating members of the general public of all ages. Dr. Fisher was responsible for the establishment and monitoring of scores of eastern bluebird nesting boxes throughout the town of Ithaca in order to encourage reestablishment of a viable population of the state bird of New York. He also led the successful campaign to enact state legislation which mandates beverage container deposit returns, thereby reducing litter in landfill throughout the state. In the tradition and legacy of Dr. Fisher, the Conservation Board is pleased to honor Cornell Plantations Natural Area Program for their contribution to the improvement and stewardship of the natural environment in the town of Ithaca and beyond. We also encourage anyone here to think of future nominees that might be recipients of this award in the future that deserve recognition. And we'd also encourage everyone here to take a look at our Facebook page. The Conservation Board has a Facebook page. And if you haven't friended us, you should. So thank you. And I think Herb has some comments too.
I do, and I guess the plaque is over there. We'll wait on that for a moment. I have been a very long-term admirer of Cornell Plantations. I did know Dick Fisher very well. He and I served on the Tompkins County Environmental Management Council. I for 30 years. I forget how many years he had, but I think we're the two longest-serving members of the EMC. And so I knew Richard very well, and this award is absolutely appropriate to be given on his behalf. One of my first connections with the Plantations was when the first time I became chair of the EMC, we looked at our unique natural areas, and that was the first revision we started then because we were a little leery of some of the information. The boundaries didn't seem quite right in some cases. And so we needed a really good field biologist to help us redraw those lines and gather more information and create more unique natural areas. And the person we turned to was Robert Wesley. And Robert Wesley worked for the Cornell Plantations. And the Cornell Plantations was gracious enough to allow him enough time to do an immense amount of field research for the Environmental Management Council, and we created a much better unique natural areas listing. The reason the unique natural areas listing is so important, and the Cornell Plantations had such an important role in it, is that a lot of municipalities use that when they're looking at development plans. And it has no legal status, but it alerts you something special is in that area. And indeed, in the recent debate about horizontal hydrofracking, the unique natural areas in some cases have been in effect turned into critical environmental areas. Those do have legal status because they're filed with the state, and the state then gives them some legal protection. So the Cornell Plantations has had an immense effect, not only on just preserving some of the beauty we see around us, but also in helping with a lot of these other efforts. And then finally, I'd just like to say that I am personally grateful for Plantations because I live in Forest Home, and that's why it took me so long to walk here, because I went the long way instead of the short way.
The scenic way.
The scenic way. And for those of us who live in Forest Home, we get to see both the cultured area of Plantations, which are the magnificent gardens and the specimens, and then by walking out, say, to Monkey Run, we get to see the wild areas of the Cornell Plantations. And in all cases, the Cornell Plantations does just an absolutely magnificent job. If you haven't been out to Monkey Run, that's one of my favorite places anywhere. Go there and take advantage of the Cornell Plantations land. So with that, we do have a plaque. And on behalf of the town of Ithaca, we wish to present the Richard B. Fisher Environmental Conservation Award for 2012 to Cornell Plantation Natural Areas Program in honor of their active and continuing contribution to the improvement of the town's natural environment, commitment to sustainability, preservation of recreational access to nature, and dedication to teaching citizens about nature stewardship in and about Ithaca, given this 11th day of May, 2013. Congratulations. Stand in there.
Well, I'm deeply humbled on behalf of the Natural Areas Program to receive this award. Walking in the footsteps of Dick Fisher and the magnificent work that he did to educate students and citizens and inspire people to conservation, to be getting this 10th award this year is quite an honor. So thank you very much to the town board, the conservation board. It is fantastic. It is not something that we do alone, and I wanted to say a few words about folks. Herb mentioned Robert Wesley. We have many staff at Plantations and volunteers and students and interns that collaborate with us, work with us, conservation partners that we work with as well, that enable us to focus on education and conservation stewardship. And so I just want to mention a few. We have Mike Roberts here that is with us at Cornell Plantations, and Jules Ginenthal that help do a lot of the stewardship work that we do day in and day out to manage our 3,400 acres of natural areas. It is a group effort for us to be able to focus and do all the work that we enjoy so much. I have just one other thing because there's enough speechifying going on, but I had the privilege a couple weeks ago to meet with Peter Kariva, the chief scientist of the Nature Conservancy, and in the ISCAL lecture he mentioned the failure of environmental efforts not accomplishing our goals. And that among the reasons for that, one is that we focus so much on the negative, about the things that we're losing, the challenges that we face, and we don't spend enough time recognizing all the successes that we do have. And hats off to the Conservation Board and the town of Ithaca for recognizing that from 10 years ago to be doing just that, right? And so we're quite honored today to be the 10th recipient of the Fisher Environmental Conservation Award. So thank you all very much. So let's plant that tree.
You know, X number of years from now, well, tomorrow I'm
Your night.
I read the accounts. You got through well before the straight enough for that. During the season by going to Garrett every week and then every 2 weeks.
Before we put the cage on the director, the memorial.
Everything under control. I'm not really sure about that. I've been working on it.
Okay. Well, congratulations to Cornell Plantations Natural Areas for their receiving the 10th Annual Richard B. Fisher Town of Ithaca Conservation Board Award. Okay. Now we're going to flip over across the valley to the Museum of the Earth. This was early May. They had what they called their Glacier Gala, which was an event to celebrate the opening of a new permanent exhibit in the museum. So if you've been to the museum, you know where the mastodon is. It's back in the sort of the far reaches of the exhibit area. They have started a glacier exhibit, and this is the outside of it with a lot of information about glaciers. And you actually walk into the glacier, and there's a lot of interesting ways to learn more about the Ice Age and the glacier, and particularly how it shaped our area, the Finger Lakes, and also some of the things that it can tell us about climate change. Here is a animation on the wall showing the changes that it took place in the formation of the Finger Lakes and so forth during and after the Ice Age. So now we're going to actually flip over to Cornell Plantations and look at some cultivated plants as opposed to native plants. This is a magnolia, and this is early in the month. I went over with a friend and went for a walk over near the Mundy Wildflower Garden. This was across the road and up in the towards the Newman Arboretum. And there was a magnolia that's in full bloom and in fact dropping this snow of petals on the ground. Here's a close-up of the blossoms of the magnolia, and here's another one dropping its petals. Very, very beautiful. Great way to celebrate spring. Go out and see incredible sights like that. So we're moving around quite a lot now. We're going to go over to Buttermilk Falls State Park. Now, here it says Lake Tremont. Now, many of you have been to Buttermilk Falls, but some people haven't been to the upper park, they call it, which if you go up Route 96B past Ithaca College and take West King Road, you come to the upper park and picnic areas, a couple of picnic areas up in there, and this little lake called Lake Tremont, which I think was built in the 1930s or so. There's a dam that's out of view here, but the lake is so old and there's been so much siltation in it that it's actually most of it, what you see through the woods from the trail that goes around the lake, you can see that much of it is no longer lake, and in fact has been filled in by the stream carrying sand and gravel and so forth from floods from maybe 80 or 90 years of time. So here's now what much of was a small lake before, or behind the dam, is now just the stream going through these wetlands. And earlier in the month I went walking up along the stream, and here were some cattails, which normally you think of as having these tight sort of punks that rise up. These are the seed heads, and they will deteriorate over the winter and fluff out, and the cotton on them will actually fly away and land somewhere else, usually in a wetland or a wet area along the banks of a stream or a pond or something like that, and start growing new plants. So that's how they distribute their seeds. Now that's a cattail because I guess they look like a tail of a cat. But down on the ground was another plant called a horsetail, which has a foliage that looks like a horse's tail, and these get much larger later in the season. Common horsetail. But this is what you see first, is the fertile seed heads coming, not seed heads, but they are, you would call them stems, fertile spore-bearing stems coming up. That's the first thing to come up, these very strange looking structures. And then they start to wither, and I think you can see one or two withered fertile stems in this picture, surrounded by the non-fertile, the vegetative stems come up. These are very plants from a very old line of plants, pre-flowering plants in the evolutionary history. And in fact, back during Carboniferous times, let's say back 300 million years ago, there were some species of horsetails that grew the size of trees and became some of our coal forests. So as I was walking back along the gravel, I saw this bird that was carrying on a big fuss, and I said, oh, that's a killdeer, and it was making lots of calls, and it must be guarding its nest because it would not move. I wasn't trying to make it move, but it held its ground. So I took this picture, and I didn't notice that right underneath it were the eggs, because they're so well camouflaged in the gravel, but it lays its eggs right there in the gravel. So the killdeer was defending them, and I didn't actually see them until I went back home and looked at the photograph on my computer. Now we're going to pop out on Cayuga Lake. The Ithaca Boat Tours has started its weekly tours, weekend tours, I should say, out of the Ithaca Farmers Market. And if you go to ithacaboattours.com, you can get the schedule, but usually 11, a 1 hour tour at 11, another one at 12:30, the dock of the Ithaca Farmers Market, and go out in the lake on a narrated tour. And I've worked on that boat for a long time. And so our first one, I think, was May 4th, and that was when these pictures were taken. We'll go up along the east shore and see some of the gorges and waterfalls up there. This is called Esty Point. There's actually a little waterfall up in there. And then here's some other waterfalls, a couple of other waterfalls along the east cliff. So those are very pretty things. A lot of things that you can see only from a boat we take you out to see. So if you're down at the farmer's market, that would be a fun thing to do, I guess. So anyway, we are kind of running out of time here. Let's take one more look here. Oh, I want to show you one more weird plant. This is actually at Buttermilk Falls on the edge of Owl Gorge that I mentioned earlier. This is called bastard toadflax, one of my favorite named plants that grows up on the rims of our gorges. So I'm going to end it with bastard toadflax growing on the rim of Owl Gorge. You can see them up in the rim of Taganic Gorge as well. I found it up there. Okay, so that's all we have for today, and we'll see you next week.